allowing yourself the time to think and actually make yourself better is more important than having a busy calendar. People probably look at the day and they want to back-to-back calls with like six different people, and then you're talking to this guy from the UFC and this guy from a sports agent, and what event can we do? Realistically, you definitely need to have time to think as a founder, because ultimately the business wouldn't be there without you.
Welcome back to Founder Mode,
the show where we talk to people building in the wild and share the lessons you only learn the hard way.
Today's episode's a little different. We're not talking about what to do. We're going Munger style and learning through inversion.
What breaks startup? What kills momentum? What decisions seem smart but aren't? That's what we're unpacking today. What are some of your favorite mistakes as a founder, Kevin?
Yeah, I think a bunch. I think just forgetting to do stuff. And I think like in the early days, you forget to register something, I think contract or some sort of registration. And then you're like, oh, I should have registered the handle or the brand or the name.
Yeah.
I've also just, in the early days, we were signing contracts. We didn't have end dates on them, and just a lot of things that at the time it just seemed harmless, but the expense of like having these little sort of lintings of mistakes add up. I think there was nothing more catalyzing than going through that sort of the acquisitions, right?
You also have a ton of history with our guest today, Bobby. Any crypto hard-earned lessons in your days as Kevin DeGons?
Yeah, I think in the crypto world, I think the lessons are crazier. I think partly because everything you say, do, and sometimes even think is financialized. And I think it's the idea of like in crypto, you're sort of IPOing with every little tweet, every little thought. And so that sort of, learning that lesson and sort of seeing people create tokens and, bet on you or, bet on the things you may do, right? Or the product features you're going to add or the customers you're going to sign or whether you're going to raise money or not. And like that became like and it still today, I think harms a lot of crypto founders early on where they struggle with this idea that you do want to have a personality and a brand and sort of talk publicly about everything you're doing, because that's great to get attention and momentum.
Yeah.
But it comes at a cost of like understanding that people are going to financialize that and over financialize. They're literally betting on you. And for as many people are betting on you to be successful, there's a bunch of people that are betting on those people to be wrong because they're going to make money on the opposite side of the bet. And so,
Is crypto betting and like sports betting one of the real use cases? Like, is it, because there's always the fight over like, what's the real crypto blockchain use case?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch, right? I think, the betting one's one where it's like, and crypto betting's allowed people to make bets just outside of jurisdictions where it's legal. And so like there's all that, and crypto was similar, right? In this very gray area for the last, 5 to 10 years. And more recently this year, it's become a lot more sort of like mainstream, banks are doing it.
McKinsey just sent an email explaining stablecoins to people. It's mainstream now.
Yeah, it's coming. And so I think crypto allowed sort of gambling. And a lot of people that I've met that were early in Bitcoin and Ethereum and these sort of coins were like, they discovered it through crypto. And even I like saw it early in poker. Like we were playing online poker and then that became illegal to play online poker. And crypto was the only way to move money in and out of these sort of online casinos, right, in the early days. And so that sort of has been a use case. I think famously there's like Silk Road and sort of the like underground eBay. There's a lot of those like that. But I think the real use case is, at the end of the day, it's like, what do we do every day? I buy stuff on my phone. I purchase things like today I pay anywhere from 2 to 3% credit card fees, depending on the merchant and the fees, and you as a business, when you take a payment, like that is the real opportunity, which is like all of commerce is riding on this 2 or 3% sort of float or fee. And that's just not going to sustain in a market where the cost of that goes to like fractions, of a penny or zero, right? It ends up being negative in many cases.
And when transactions can happen 24/7, 365 instead of during banking.
Never closes. Never closes, always settles. So that is, I think, the real use case. It just is going to take time for
some big entrenched players in the space.
Yeah, but I mean, Visa, MasterCard, and Amex would make good money on my phone, paying 3% for everything I tap, right? And then, all of the fees that are layered underneath. So I think, that's the ultimate sort of use case, is just kind of all of commerce. I think one other thing that was funny, Elon famously said to me once, the idea that like crypto is like running Oracle on your laptop. So like the idea that crypto can handle that level of volume of transactions, like if you think of like what the credit card networks around the world do, and then what is what can a crypto blockchain do at scale? And there's many of them now, and they're starting to scale. But like, still, the number of transactions that happen in a lot of cases isn't there. And I think some of the seven, Bobby, our guest, who's built on Solana, is one of the faster blockchains, and it's got a bunch of like kind of proof points of being able to be the kind of the NASDAQ of crypto.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Enough about me. Jason, what about you? What did you screw up?
I've got one thing. I think the number one thing that I'll tell people that is an easy mistake to make as a first time or early stage founder is choosing your co-founders. That's where I didn't do enough research. I didn't really know what I was getting into starting my first startup and co-founding the company that I started down here in SoCal. And I think we'll probably talk to Bobby about the right place to start a startup. Yeah, I think if you can do one thing, it's kind of like choosing a partner for life, like somebody that you want to get married. Like, definitely do some dating, get engaged, have a long engagement, like really get to know your co-founders. I think I love it when you talk about your relationship with your partner JJ and how you guys have known each other like 25 plus years. Like, at a certain point, you're finishing each other's sandwiches. You're kind of doing everything. You know what the other person's going to think and say before they say it, so you can like skip a lot of that stuff. And there's no substitute for that. But in the like sea of all the people you could start a business with, there's good actors, there's bad actors. We'll talk to Bobby about like the bad actors in the crypto betting world, I'm sure. And I think if you're going to start a startup not in crypto, making sure at least that you start somebody that has high integrity, that does what they say they're going to do, tells the truth. Not 100% where I landed, and learn some hard lessons that way. And I'll leave it I'll leave it there.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, Jason, every founder has a list of mistakes they'd never repeat. And, I think the real pros, they share that list early and often, and kind of learn from it and scale.
Yeah, today's guest is going to do exactly that. He's seen the hype, he's scaled through it, and he knows how to build without blowing it all up.
Yeah, Bobby's came through sports science, kind of broke into crypto, co-founded one of the most interesting sort of wagering platforms in Web3.
He worked with elite athletes. He launched fast growth platforms and figured out how to stay grounded while the space moved faster than ever. Kevin, should we bring him on?
Let's do it.
All right.
Bobby, welcome to Founder Mode. You've built one of the, one of the fastest moving spaces. I mean, super volatile, right? Crypto, sports betting, blockchain. And now you've, kind of kept your head, scaled fast, and really kind of at the same time stayed grounded. I mean, looking back on some of our earlier conversations, it's always incredible, like how much energy stuff's going on in your space. And then, kind of the way you guys pull through it.
Yeah.
Welcome, Bobby. We're excited to have you here. How's it going?
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for having me here, guys. Yeah. All good. All good. Like Kevin
Excellent.
said, then this is a fast moving space. You've only got to look at the stuff that's going on with prediction markets now, and it's looking like the sports book and casino business might be going out the window. So we've always got to evolve.
Yeah, you gotta keep moving. Well, let's start broad. What's the fastest way to ruin a startup before it even gets going?
I've been thinking about this a lot over the past 2 weeks, I'd say, and I think the fastest way is to overhire. Definitely, I think it's the easiest thing to do, and at the time it seems like the right thing to do. But ultimately, when you look back, it's just an absolute disaster overhiring.
Yeah, and then when you guys have done that in the past, or you've seen that happen, like, what's sort of the approach you take to sort of rein that in and fix it? Like, any advice to founders out there that are sort of like, I'll look at it that state, maybe too many butts in the seats, and do you do it quickly? Do you, how do you kind of rationalize like what to do next?
No, yeah. I mean, I think the hardest thing to do once you hire a bunch of people is obviously fire them. The saying, quick to hire, long to fire, or should we say, long to hire, quick to fire? It should be
That's the
really.
one.
So,
Yeah.
it's once you get these people in, it's actually a nightmare to hire people on, salaries as well. I think as a young startup, what you really want is, maybe contractors where, you're not having to pay, like taxes and pensions and holidays and HR and the headache and buying equipment for people. It's just an absolute nightmare.
Yeah. So you're deep into crypto betting. What is a rookie move there that kills most people that are entering that space?
Well, I think from traditional betting, say you have a FanDuel account, so you'll put $100 on NFL game, probably lose, and you're not kind of blowing up support saying, give me 20, 30 bucks back. In the crypto space, it's very much bonus driven, which I think is kind of the wrong approach for the industry. It's not really good for anybody. Players hop from casino to casino, bonus hunting. They're not sticky. They're not loyal. But then you get kind of caught up in that yourself, and you kind of forget your own path and forget why you probably started the business. And you then end up, we were doing 50% cashback last month, which like we didn't plan on ever doing that, but you get caught up in a kind of a vicious cycle with all these other casinos. And ultimately you can't compete as well. Stake have got unlimited money. Roulette have got unlimited money. We haven't. So like, we work hard all month and then we give 50% back to players, and then you've got to pay supplier fees and wages. It's like a race to the bottom.
It's incredible when you think about that and sort of deciding on what your roadmap is and picking sort of what you want to go build. But what's maybe a product feature that you once thought was brilliant, but then turned out to be a complete waste of time or worse? It sounds like bonuses is one of them. Is there other things that you guys have run into that you're just like, wow, we never should have done that?
Yeah, well, there's two. There's we're quite a social project, so we thought having a chat at the side of the at the casino would be good, but that's been a disaster. You've got people saying all sorts of swear words, racist comments, stuff about politics, but like not in a good way. And then you've also got people saying, where my withdrawal? It's like when you stream a fight or a game, and you've got like this, the chat on the side, and it's just popping off, but not in a good way. So that is not some people like it. It's not so good for us. But then another bad feature, which Kevin, I'll give you guys credit at DGods, your user profiles was thick and pretty slick, whereas our user profiles, it took like 6 months to build. By the time we shipped it, nobody cared. Creating like a user profile in crypto, fast paced, not really the one.
This is good. These are good tips, good advice. Take notes out there, those that are listening. So you scaled pretty fast, Bobby. What's a growth tactic that looks smart maybe on paper, but backfires in the real world? So you talked about bonuses, but is there something else that you guys have done or seen that you're like, don't do that?
Yeah. I think when you want to bring calls in, key opinion leaders, not having them incentivized with the platform. If you're just giving them 5, 10, 20K to do X, Y, Z, it never works out. You need aligned incentives with these guys, and you see it in casinos that let big calls in on the seed round or in on the equity round, and they are obviously just pumping their bags from the start. But it's in their best interest. They post naturally. They post in their own words. It's not scripted. It feels real. Whereas if you're paying 10 grand for an influencer with K, he might post a few bets or a few thoughts on the project, but then they're like mercenaries, aren't they? They're with another casino next month, and you think, what the fuck? So yeah, I think paying, not having aligned incentives with any calls is a bad idea.
I like it. And then what's something that you guys probably spent too much time on or over optimized too early, and what should you have done instead?
Well, I think and you said this a lot in calls we've had privately, Kevin, is kind of like just like kind of ship it and kind of fix it later. And I think timing is obviously everything for a product. Like look at Stake, Shuffle, Roulette, and Rollbit. They launched at the perfect time, and they've just got a absolutely gigantic audience now because of the time they launched. Whereas if Rollbit would have maybe delayed it 6 months, because the front end didn't look nice, and this product wasn't built at the time. But it's kind of just like I think if you've got an idea, I think you should just, get it to its MVP, get it out, take the feedback, iterate. And, these are all obvious things, but they're very hard to do because, as a founder, you want the first impression of your product to be the right impression. But, and then you think if it's bad, they're not going to come back. But, they probably will. So, yeah.
If someone's trying to grow, Bobby, with crypto airdrops, partnerships, influencers, what's maybe the wrong way to do it?
I think, like vanity metrics in this space. A real example we had was we had a free to play game called Block Picks, it came from the UK. So Sky Bet are the biggest sports betting casino in the UK. They're like the version of ESPN in the States. So ESPN Bet, so it's Sky and Sky Bet. So basically on a Saturday, they have like the preview shows of all the football games, and they have a panel of ex-players, and they all go through their picks, And then basically it's a free-to-play app, and they put up 6 games, and you've got to guess the correct score. So 2-1, 1-1, etc. And at the end of the 6 picks, they've got a 6 feature. It says add to bet slip, and then they take you over to Skybet, and then you put the bet on. This is also free to enter. So every week, this is £250,000 that you can win, and it's based, and then they do it based on points over a certain amount of like game times, and you can win prizes and all that. So we basically made a crypto version of that, and we ran it last year when we launched for the Euros, and we had 12,000 players every week, which from the outside looking in was great, but they were all farmers from Indonesia, Bangladesh, Nigeria, India. And we thought it was, we were like, how many players yesterday? 12,000. But in reality, how many came over to the casino? Literally none. Yeah, I'd say like less rely on vanity metrics.
Yeah, I like it. And then just backing back into some kind of fundamentals. Shifting gears a little bit to kind of the team and leading, what's like something that startup leaders kind of get in their own way once things start working? Like where, hey, you've seen stuff working and then you maybe, couldn't get rid of that founder sort of like creativity and wanted to sort of meddle with something and really should have stepped back and let your team run with it.
Yeah, I'd say, founders have a hard time delegating, don't they? It's like, at the start, obviously I mentioned, we overhired, but then you still kind of want to get involved in every bit of the business. But I think allowing yourself the time to think and actually make yourself better is more important than having a busy calendar. People probably look at the day and they want to back-to-back calls with like 6 different people, and then you're talking to this guy from the UFC and this guy from a sports agent, and you're talking to what event can we do? And like you're just being a busy fool. Realistically, all those books everyone buys and you never read, so probably better taking a bit of time to read one of them, and you never know what might come into your head. So I think like keeping yourself busy enough so you're not itching to get on other calls, but you definitely need to have time to think as a founder, because ultimately the business wouldn't be there without you.
I love that, Bobby. We talk about that a lot on the show. I just want everybody to actually hear what he just said. Like, don't fill your calendar just because. Like, do stuff that actually matters. And I think it's rather sage advice that I hope some folks listening will take. So you've built through a lot of volatility. You're in this inherently volatile space. What's the worst way to handle both internal pressure, external panic? Like, how do you ride the storm well, and what should you not do?
To be honest, to a fault, I'm probably too calm. But when we started the business, started with my brother Paul, and then a friend Ryan, and another friend called Christian. But Paul, I don't know if you read the Bitcoin billionaires book about the Winklevoss twins, and like they kind of say they're perfect because they've got each side of the brain. Like one's like analytical, and then one's kind of like creative. So like me and Paul are kind of like that. Paul's kind of like better on numbers, and probably like more of a leader with people, whereas I'm kind of more reserved, and I'm like, right, Paul, take a chill pill, it's all good. So we've been through many crises. We've held Solana from $250 to $8, then had to sell it because we needed money for wages. We've been through it all. Another thing is kind of what you've got to remember. And like, it's kind of treading on the edge of like nihilism, but like, we're all going to die. Everything's going to be fine. It's not that deep. I think you've just got to take a step back and just appreciate, and like stop probably thinking that what you're doing is so important, right? And just kind of chill out.
I love it, dude.
Yeah, let's talk red flags. So what's a red flag in crypto or betting that people maybe ignore or don't pay attention to, but end up regretting later?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big one is that, there's like 1,001 casinos out there, but probably one of the biggest is that people kind of don't go on the socials beforehand or the Instagram, and they don't check out whether, so many times people come to us after depositing an amount, winning, and then not getting paid out. So, he's massive in the space. So I think, and it's hard for like, customers, because, they might see a sponsored post, or they might see a call who's been paid 20 grand, whose engagement is fake, and they think this casino looks legit, and then they end up, regretting it down the line because, they've had a big win and they can't get the funds out. So I think credibility is a big one in the space, and I think customers they've got to do some vetting into who they're playing with.
I think one of the things that attracted me in the early days to sort of crypto and blockchain and Bitcoin and all that sort of was just the technology of like the idea of this sort of like write once, read many times. It was like this, kind of permanence of the blockchain. As you guys look at, there's obviously benefits to being there, but like, what's one of the worst reasons, you see people, I'm sure like you've seen so many people come after you guys have been around for a while, right? In terms of the space, and you see new people jumping into it. What's one of the worst reasons people come to the blockchain, right? Or one of the worst reasons that they sort of, launch a product on the blockchain today?
I mean, it's probably the reason you guys are thinking now is that, people just think that this space is just quick money and easy money. And then, they launch a product and they don't realize how hard it actually is and how quick the money doesn't come. So, they launch something for, there's no free lunch, right? So, yeah, I think that's the number one reason is, they might not have the most passion for what they're launching anyway, because they're launching it for the
Yeah.
wrong reasons. And then when you launch it
Yeah.
for the money reason and it doesn't come.
You've talked a lot about math and probability, and we look at like prediction markets. I saw a chart today, that one of these prediction markets like had more sort of like volume and sort of like energy or, around it than even the election, right? Which is
Yeah.
crazy to think that like NFL week 1 can see that sort of spike. Like,
Yeah.
what's the wrong way to sort of apply that lesson, like in a startup, to say, look, you really don't know what the real sort of global top is on some of this stuff. And like
Yeah.
prediction markets arguably were like illegal and nobody said that wasn't a thing. And crypto has its, had its sort of political on and off, especially here in the US. Like, I'm curious how you guys kind of evolve what you're doing around seeing the markets just move like this.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think it'd be interesting to get your guys' take on the prediction markets
Yeah.
as well, because obviously you're based in the US, but when I was
Yeah.
listening to Kyle Samani on Empire last night, and obviously he's invested into Kalshi, so he's kind of pushing that.
Yeah.
But I feel like as like a sports purist, should we say, it actually, and this is quite ridiculous, the fact that, I own a sportsbook casino, but when I'm going to a sporting event or, watching it on the telly, I actually kind of hate nothing more than seeing odds like push towards me. Like,
Yeah.
I seen Cal Samani say last night, he was like, you'd be in a group chat with the boys and, you'll have a bet, Will Bryson drive this green and, it'll be coming up on your screen. And I was thinking, if I'm watching the Masters on a Sunday, at Augusta, I don't want to be seeing a bet about Bryson DeChambeau. I want to just enjoy the sport as it is. But culturally, I don't know if you guys are different to us English, but like, I know back at home, all my friends that love football and go to the match, like if they're watching the football, they're like engrossed in the football. They're not betting on if, Mohamed Salah's going to score next. They're like, I want him to score because I want him to score. I don't want to win money from it. So it's like it's also a cultural thing. It's like the UK is like the most sophisticated gambling market in the world. The US is obviously probably going to be the largest very soon. But you guys are just nuts, aren't you? It's like, so yeah, I'm interested to see what you guys think about like prediction markets. Would you want to be, watching Bloomberg and having a bet on if Jerome Powell's going to do 50 bips tonight? Like, I don't know. Would you?
It's interesting. It is interesting, right? Because I think like at some level, it's the most purest form of humanity. Like you make decisions in life and you're predicting, should I cross the street? Is the car doing 80 miles an hour or 20 miles an hour? You're like, I don't know. Like my daughter's 15 and a half. She's learning to drive. And like she, we're like, should we make the left turn? And I'm like, I don't know. It's at night. The lights are getting big fast, but like,
What would
I'm going to
FSD
let him
do?
go. I'm going to let them go. No, but I mean, we got to learn before FSD. You actually can, legally, I learned you can use FSD to do all of your driving practice. You just can't use it in the test.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
Which is wild. So it's like you can study for the SAT and have it answer all your test questions, but you can't use ChatGPT in the real test.
Yeah, that's a
so you're like,
problem.
you better learn without it. So my thing on this prediction thing's interesting because I do think that like there's situations where you're engaged or you're with buddies and you're hanging out and you're like, hey, who do you think's going to do this? Or who do you think's going to win? Or you're cheering for a team. And there's this like, do you want to bet on it? $5 you can't do this, or $7 you can't drive the golf cart around this trash can, like all these dumb things that sort of happen. And prediction markets kind of like, provides a way to sort of like now, make a bet on anything. But I also think, to your point, like it is crazy. Like you can't load a show on the weekends or any sporting event without seeing a banner of like DraftKings or some kind of like betting odds sort of like spiral running through it. And so I think that part of it is a little bit nauseating at times to take away from the pureness of it.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that to your question about culturally, like what's going on here in the States, Bobby, everyone I know that does fantasy football, they're watching individual players playing and trying to think about how that's affecting the stats of their fantasy team. So I think there's a similar obsession here culturally, and I'm not sure. Like, I'm not sure that there's the like purity or purists anymore with anything. Like, I think everybody's
Yeah,
just
that's true.
like, just trying to make a buck. And you made a comment earlier about get rich quick. Like, there's no such thing, right? And so I think, does it suck the enjoyment? Maybe, or maybe I think there's a large contingent of people now that is their source of enjoyment, is just
Yeah.
the kind of riskiness and the edge of their seat. Am I going to win the bet this week? So talking about kind of the first couple years building, any kind of thoughts on what you would not do again? Taking yourself back to when you first started.
I think one of the key things is kind of where you're based and where the startup's based. We kind of we're from Liverpool in England, which is kind of like in the northwest. It's mainly it's like a working class city. I think part of the Titanic was built there. I should actually know that. Crypto couldn't be more or less Liverpool, probably. I think founders early on should kind of prioritize where they're building, and I think if they're serious about the product, I think the best thing they can do, honestly, is just obviously just move out to the West Coast, or maybe Miami now, or around that area. But since we've been to like Singapore for conferences, or Dubai, for example, it's just night and day the people that you meet, and on the journey, how much they're going to help you as well. I just think staying in your city or in a country that isn't like a vibrant for the tech scene. I think that's like the number one thing that people would.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's funny because you think of all these, being in San Francisco for 25 years, right? I think everyone's like, oh, you got to come to San Francisco to do startups, or, you got to come here to do tech. And I think we've all, kind of had these like, then, or LA of the Silicon Beach, right? Like they start like naming these little corridors of like, or you Flatiron in New York, where you get these pockets of sort of innovation. And I think it is interesting because I've thought about this a lot. Like now that I've been doing this for a couple of decades, like I kind of have my like, I'm for better or worse, like trained on how I'm going to go do something, and the location matters potentially less because I've, had a network and built folks. But I do think there's this idea that in the early days, it's important to sort of understand, are you around, like-minded people that are thinking and doing and acting the same way? And so I think that's interesting. I think, cool, man. Well, I want to ask one more question. I think what's like one worse piece of startup advice that you've ever followed? Like somebody's like, hey man, this is the way you do startup, or you read something and you're like, we're going to try that. And you're like, wow, that was a disaster.
Well, I mean, it kind of comes back to the point about being like a perfectionist. So like when we started the business, I was reading Steve Jobs's biography by Walter Isaacson, and like he's Steve Jobs, and I'm like, I'm not Steve Jobs, but like you read that, after you read it, you really believe that you are. So like I think kind of not listening to customers is obviously not a good thing. But at the time, I was like, I remember there was a quote in it, and it was basically like,
customer has no idea what they want.
exactly. But like, so it's at the start, I was like, they're all idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. If it wasn't for us, there wouldn't be this product and all this. And then you look back and you think, no, maybe they were right about a lot of things. So yeah, that's kind of one of them.
Bobby, this is awesome. Where can people follow what you're building, read, what you're up to, and just quite frankly, follow more on your journey?
Yeah. Just like one more point for any, young founders out there, I think, when we kind of started the business, I just had a little girl, and then I kind of had another little girl, and I really wasn't interested in making myself like a personality, like a Frank D. Gods, for example. I've been in the space for 4 years, but it didn't interest me. But, looking back, probably one of my biggest regrets is not productizing myself. Realistically, I should probably have, 50K followers on Twitter, and, if you look at every big business, the founder basically is the business, right? So I think that impacts the sportsbook and casino now, because there isn't like a base of the business, should we say? So yeah, if you're starting out, productize yourself, go on podcasts, just do TikToks, record your journey. So that's just one little bit of advice. But yeah, you can find me on X, Bob the Wizard 23, and on X, BlockBetGG, and then on Instagram, BlockBetGG as well. So yeah, anyone interested in a bet, just drop me a DM, and I can set a group chat up with me and a couple of the boys, and we can give you a great service. So yeah, just drop me a DM, and we'll look after you.
Yeah, we'll drop drop that in the show notes. Please DM Bobby if you want to check out what he's building and get in there. This was exactly what we had hoped it would be. Bobby, raw, real, packed with hard-earned lessons, and we just appreciate you being here, man.
Thanks for that, guys. Appreciate it. See ya.
That was a blueprint in reverse. I mean, Bobby gave us a checklist of what not to do. Every founder should just print this out.
Yeah, agreed. What I loved was his honesty, no chest beating, just clarity on what breaks when you don't stay focused. Kevin, what were your top 5?
Yeah, I think, so overhiring backfires, keep the team lean, hire slowly. I think, use contractors before you shift into like a big W-2 or sort of permanent team. Bonus wars can create churn. So, this kind of incentives could be a race to the bottom. Ship an MVP pass and iterate. You want to get something out there that works and then polish it once it's going. Ignore those vanity metrics, focus on conversion and like what's the real ROI of the value. Delegate and protect thinking time. You can have a packed calendar, but you need to have time to think and relax and really understand strategy.
Nailed it. If this episode made you rethink your roadmap or your mindset, send it to someone who's deep in the build right now.
That's a wrap, because sometimes the best way to build is knowing exactly what not to do.